What does a Fortune 500 CFO do at 6 a.m. on a random Tuesday? That, 90 days later, makes a stranger walk up to him and ask for his number? Not optimize his diet. Not buy a new watch. Not hire a coach. Something so quiet you'd miss it if you blinked. His name is Frank, he's 58, and on March 14, 2026, he logged out of LinkedIn. Then he deleted 3 dating apps. Then he muted his work notifications. Then he walked into the gym in a paint-stained 2009 t-shirt. And stopped doing the one thing every man over 50 has been doing since he was 12 years old. First time in 30 years a stranger asked for his number. He didn't get younger. He didn't get richer. He just stopped. That's the whole story. And later in this video, I'll tell you about a 62-year-old contractor named Hector, who answered exactly 7 texts in 3 months. 7. And ended up with a partner he didn't have to chase, audition for, or apologize to. His wife. Same house. Same coffee maker. Different man entirely. So what's actually happening here, brother? Across boardrooms and gyms and hardware stores and Sunday porches, men over 50 are quietly quitting 5 behaviors at once. And the strangest thing is happening as a result. They're becoming the most magnetic thing in the room. Not bitter. Not retreating. Sleeping like rocks. Walking slower. Talking less. Younger guys are taking notes. Women in their 40s are confused. Dating coaches are quietly rewriting their material. Because the most attractive frame a man can hold in 2026 isn't pursuit. Isn't game. Isn't optimization. It's surrender. Real surrender. Wake up and don't care surrender. But before I tell you what Frank actually quit on March 14th, I have to show you something most men have never been allowed to see clearly. The cage they've been performing inside since they were 16. Here's a question worth sitting with. When was the last time you said something you actually meant in front of another human being and didn't immediately edit it? If you can't remember, you're not broken. You're just tired. Because from 16 to 50, every man signed an unwritten contract. Your value equals your ability to perform. Perform pursuit. Perform competence. Perform certainty. Perform humor when nothing's funny. Perform interest when you're tired. Perform stability when you're falling apart. Perform answers when you don't even have questions. You weren't a person, brother. You were a brand. With a content calendar, a tone of voice, a target audience, and a 24/7 obligation to never go off script. So what happens to a man who runs that brand for 35 years without a day off? The University of Michigan ran a study in 2024 that nobody wants to put on a billboard. They asked, where does all that energy actually go? The answer was 4 hours and 42 minutes a day. Every single day. Men over 45 spend that long in what researchers call active social performance mode. Twice the rate of women. Imagine running a treadmill in a wool suit for hours a day, every day since the Reagan administration. That's what's been happening to your nervous system, brother, and nobody handed you a stopwatch. So why does any of this matter? Because your body keeps the receipt. Sustained performance taxes the same chemical that gives you motivation, drive, and the spark in your eye when something actually matters. Dopamine. And dopamine is not a faucet. It's a savings account. After enough decades of forced enthusiasm, the account drains. Not depression exactly. Something quieter. Flatter. The thing where you walk into your own birthday party and feel like a guest at a stranger's funeral. Marcus, a retired engineer in Connecticut, 61 years old, told me something I haven't been able to shake. I spent 35 years answering questions I didn't care about. Then one Tuesday I just stopped answering. Nobody died. The earth kept spinning. And I realized the entire performance was happening in a theater nobody was watching. Read that twice, because every quiet quit starts there. Not with a divorce. Not with a breakdown. With one small Tuesday. So what was the first behavior Marcus and for other men quit? It's the exact thing dating coaches charge 30-year-olds $5,000 a weekend to learn. And these men did it by accident. Imagine doing the right thing for 6 months and getting punished for it. That's where the story starts. Walter is 64, retired English teacher in Oregon, just out of a 31-year marriage. And somebody convinced him to write one sentence on an index card. He taped it to the bathroom mirror. The sentence was this: never send a second message until the first one has been answered. That's it. No game. No 3-day rule. No mirroring her texting cadence. Just one quiet sentence that ended decades of silent begging dressed up as politeness. So what happened? For 6 months, brother, absolutely nothing. 0 dates. 0 matches converting. 0 second meetings. His friends told him his standards were too high. His sister told him he'd missed his window. A woman at his book club told him, very kindly, that he was giving off lonely energy. Walter didn't argue. He just kept the rule. Then month 7 cracked open like a door he didn't know existed. The same woman who told him about his energy called him on a Sunday afternoon. Not texted. Called. Asked if he wanted to walk the river trail. By month 9, 2 women he'd never pursued were rearranging their calendars around his. By month 12, Walter had the problem most men would kill for. Too many. So how does a man go from invisible to overbooked by changing one rule? It's not magic, and it's not personality. It's a thing called pursuit signaling. Every time a man fires a second, third, fourth message into silence, he's broadcasting a status report to the other person's nervous system. Status: low. Available: 2. Effortful: yes. Think of it like a credit score for desirability. Every unanswered follow-up dings the number faster than language can process. When Walter stopped broadcasting, he didn't become a different man. He just stopped transmitting his own discount. He put it cleaner than I ever could. I didn't become more attractive, brother. I became more available to myself. Walter quit chasing. The next man quit something even harder. And it cost him a 22-year friendship. What does it cost a man to stop explaining himself? More than he thought, less than he feared. Back to Marcus, the Connecticut engineer. After his Tuesday, he made a second rule. And this one was harder than Walter's because it didn't just change his dating life. It rewired every conversation he had. He stopped explaining himself. Not in a rude way. Not in a cold shoulder way. Structurally. If he didn't want the dinner, he said, "I'm not going to make it. Period." No story about his back. No invented work conflict. No elaborate apology that doubled as an audition for permission. If he wasn't drinking that night, he said, "Not for me, thanks." Period. No medical history. No bad weekend in college origin myth. Just no. So how did the people in his life take it? His best friend of 22 years called him cold. His sister called him checked out. His son, 31 and very online, called him emotionally unavailable. Marcus answered all three the same way. He said, "Okay." That word, brother, that one word, ended more arguments than any speech he'd ever given. So what's the actual mechanism? Yale ran a study in 2023 that almost nobody talked about. They found that men in mixed status conversations explain themselves, an average of 2.3 times more than is actually required to convey the information. 2 1/3 times more. That's not communication. That's leakage. Authority leaking out of every unnecessary sentence like air out of a slow tire. You don't notice the tire going flat until you can't make the turn. Cut the 2.3, and the same researchers measured a 31% drop in weekly cognitive load. Imagine getting back a third of your brain at 61. A third. Just from saying less. Marcus has a line he uses now when people press him. Explanation is leaking authority. Most men leak until they're empty. I stopped leaking on a Tuesday and I haven't been empty since. 6 months later, that 22-year friend left his second wife and moved into an apartment alone. Last Marcus heard, the guy was reading a lot, probably catching up. Marcus quit explaining. But the third man quit something his wife had built her entire identity around. And her reaction? It made him sit down at his kitchen table and cry for the first time in 11 years. What if your marriage isn't broken? It's just running on a generator that won't turn off. Hector is 62, carpenter in New Mexico, married 28 years to the same woman. 3 grown kids, 2 grandkids, a house he built with his own hands. By every external metric, his marriage was fine. But internally, Hector wasn't a husband. He was a foreman running a construction site. He ordered the groceries his wife forgot. He fixed the leak before she noticed. He booked the family vacations. He filed the taxes. He scheduled the dentist. He remembered her mother's birthday in 3 states. His wife, lovely woman, had simply stopped touching any of it years ago. Why would she? Hector was the backup generator that never turned off. So what happens when the generator finally goes silent? Hector did something that took him 6 months to work up to. He just stopped. Not dramatically. He didn't announce it. He didn't make a chart. He simply waited to be asked. Week 1 was the test. The kitchen sink dripped for 3 days before his wife noticed and mentioned it. He fought every instinct in his body and didn't reach for the wrench. Week 2. A cousin's birthday slipped past unmarked, and the world did not end. Then came the moment. Week 3. His wife asked him, casually, over coffee, "Honey, did you book Maui?" Hector looked up from his coffee and said, "No. Did you want me to?" She blinked. He said, "I wasn't sure if you wanted Maui this year." She blinked again. And then she said the sentence that, in 28 years of marriage, she had never said. "I don't know what to do. What do you think?" First time. 28 years. So why is that one sentence the entire ballgame? It's a thing relationship therapists call role inversion. When one partner overfunctions, the other doesn't see her husband as a peer anymore. She sees him as infrastructure. And nobody asks the plumbing for its opinion. They just expect it to keep the lights on. The minute Hector turned off the generator, his wife had to look at him as a person again. Hector quit overfunctioning. The fourth man quit something so small you'd miss it if you weren't looking. But it changed every conversation he had after that. And one weekend, 8 weeks in, his coworkers started a betting pool about whether he'd been promoted. Could a single word, repeated 47 times in 7 days, be the reason a man feels invisible at 56? Ray spent 30 years selling for a living. Tampa, sales manager. 3 decades in a profession that runs on one word. Sorry. Sorry to bother you. Sorry for the delay. Sorry, just one more question. Sorry, are you the decision maker? Sorry. So Ray did something most men never do. He counted, carried a small notebook for 1 week, made a tally mark every time the word left his mouth. Sunday night he opened the notebook. 47 marks. For things he hadn't done. For taking up space. For having a voice. For ordering the food he wanted. For breathing in his own house. He felt something he hadn't felt in 30 years. Embarrassment. Not for being bad at his job. Embarrassment for the man he'd become without noticing. So he ran an experiment. He cut the word from his vocabulary unless he'd actually caused harm. In its place, 3 phrases. Thanks for waiting. I'll take care of it. That's fair. That's the entire program. 3 phrases. 8 weeks later, his coworkers started asking if he'd been promoted. He hadn't. He just stopped apologizing. His posture changed. His voice dropped half an octave. His meetings ended faster. People started saying his name first when he walked in. 6 months in, he got a text from an ex-partner he hadn't spoken to in 2 years. 8 words. You sound different. I don't know why. That's the whole magic, brother. He didn't sound different because his life got better. His life got better because he sounded different. Apology, when it's automatic, is a preemptive surrender to anyone who might be inconvenienced by your existence. Ray surrendered to nobody. And nobody, it turns out, was waiting for him to. Ray quit apologizing. But the 5th man, Frank, the CFO from the very beginning, quit the deepest one of all. The one every man in this video was actually doing underneath the other 4. And it's the exact reason a stranger asked for his number at the gym. So what does a man with 47,000 LinkedIn followers and 3 speaking engagements that quarter actually quit on a Wednesday morning? Take it back to March 14, 2026. Frank, 58, CFO of a publicly traded company you've definitely heard of. A wardrobe of identical navy blazers because he'd read somewhere that consistent uniform projects executive presence. A personal trainer who texted him motivational quotes. A dating profile listing scotch, sailing, and strategy because some friend in marketing told him triads convert. He had everything a high-functioning man over 50 is supposed to have. So why couldn't he look at himself in the mirror? Wednesday morning, getting dressed for a board meeting. Frank glanced up and didn't recognize the man putting on the blazer. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't in crisis. He was just exhausted in a way no amount of sleep was going to fix. Because in maybe the most expensive 5 seconds of self-awareness in his life, Frank realized something. Every conversation he'd had in the last decade, with women, with colleagues, with his own children, had been a performance of the version of Frank he believed those people needed. He hadn't been a person in 12 years. He'd been a deliverable. So he did something that, on paper, looked like a midlife crisis, and in reality was the exact opposite. The LinkedIn account went first. Then the dating apps. Then the work notifications between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. The blazers got donated. And in their place came that paint-stained t-shirt from 2009. And here's the part that surprised even him. He didn't take selfies about it. He didn't post about discipline. He didn't tell anyone. 90 days later, the architect at the water station. She didn't know he was a CFO. She'd never seen his LinkedIn. She just kept noticing, day after day, the calm one in the corner who didn't seem to need the gym to like him. So what's actually happening at the biological level? Performance, when it runs long enough, registers in another person's nervous system as threat. Their body flips into low-grade defense, the same way it would around a salesman who's a little too friendly. Non-performance, sustained over time, does the opposite. It tells the room, I want nothing from you. And the moment a person feels that, they relax. The same way you'd relax around a sleeping dog instead of a barking one. That's why the calm one in the corner is always, eventually, the most interesting man in the room. Frank put it in a sentence I'm never going to forget. I didn't get more attractive, brother. I got more true. And the difference between true and performed is the only thing women over 40 actually notice. 5 men. 5 quiet quits. One pattern reshaping the dating market quietly enough that the people in charge haven't noticed yet. So what happens the day you actually try this? The world won't throw you a parade. The world will throw you a verdict. Your sister will say you're giving up. Your buddy at the bar. The one whose blood pressure tells the truth his words won't. will say you've lost your edge. A woman who doesn't know you yet will say you're low energy. And every single one of them will be reading the situation upside down. Because surrender isn't defeat, brother. Surrender is what depletion of fucks looks like when it finally gets organized into a strategy. Male psychology after 50 has stumbled accidentally into the exact frame that dating coaches charge 30-year-olds $5,000 a weekend to learn. The difference is the 30-year-old is faking it on purpose. The 58-year-old is doing it because he literally cannot generate the energy to pretend anymore. Guess which one the room can feel the difference between. Exactly. The room always knows. So here's where you fit in depending on where you're sitting. If you're a man under 40 watching this, save yourself a decade. You don't need a divorce. You don't need a burnout. You don't need to wait until your dopamine bank account is overdrawn. You can install all 5 quiet quits this month. Walter's index card on the bathroom mirror. Marcus's, okay. Hector's, did you want me to? Ray's 3 phrases. Frank's logout. None of them require permission. None of them cost money. All of them work. If you're a man over 50, hear me carefully, because this video is not telling you to leave. Most of you don't need to leave. Most of you have already, in some private corner of your mind, started quitting these 5 behaviors without realizing what you were doing. This video is telling you that what you've been calling getting old or losing interest or checking out is none of those things. It's an upgrade. It's not the end of your magnetism. It's the first time in your life it's actually yours instead of borrowed. And if you're a woman watching this, wondering why the calm one in the corner is suddenly the most interesting man in the room, there's no mystery. He stopped performing. That's the entire answer. The men who used to chase you are quiet now. The men who used to over-explain are giving you 3-word answers. The men who used to fix everything are letting things sit. And the strange new thing happening in your gut when you walk past one of them, that's not coincidence. That's biology recognizing a frame your nervous system has been hungry for a long time. So if this hit home, drop your age in the comments and tell me which of the 5 quiet quits you've already started. Or which one you're scared to start. And if you know a man who needs to hear this, send it to him. This might be the most important 18 minutes he watches this year. I'll see you in the next one.